Hello, everybody. Anna Sabramowicz here. Thank you so much for joining me today. We are doing take number 2 with one of my favorite people and friends, Dr. Robin Sargent. Robin, thank you so much for being so accommodating and joining me today.
Oh my gosh. Well, I'm thrilled to be here. The very first time I met you was because you said yes to come talk to me on my podcast. And I think that's what sparked our friendship and relationship. And so it's just really, truly an honor to come full circle and now be on your podcast.
Woohoo! Absolutely. And I think this is the opportunity for the both of us to really get to know each other, especially you. I want to dig into your journey to get to here, which is a very successful entrepreneur, instructional designer, mom, wife, all those awesome things, which is so cool. And yeah, it kind of sounds like you're living it all, lady. So I want to know all the details.
So the big question is this: how are instructional designers like us, who can't sit back and accept the status quo, who are striving to realize our own creative potential, how do we work in a way that lets us truly create and contribute and make an impact that we can be proud of, while at the same time fall in love with the process? That is the question, and this podcast will give you the answers. My name is Anna Sabramowicz, and I want to welcome you to the Scenario Secrets podcast.
And I interviewed you for the upcoming Learner Engagement Summit. One of the things is, you kind of read people's bios, but you don't really get to know about them and how they, it's just a couple of lines. So that's what I want to dig into today. So this is going to be fun. All right. So one of the things that I think that was interesting to me was that you have a PhD in education. And to me, that sounds like intentionality, because I think a lot of us fall into this profession where, there's accidental instructional designers. But for you, you were very intentional. And I want you to just dig into that for us. Why education?
It's more like I was intentional about making the transition once I found out about instructional design. Now, I knew that I always had the goal to get my PhD, and that might go back to, when I was in my bachelor's program. I knew that I was going to go to PhD. I went and got a master's in religion, and I was going to go and get a PhD in comparative religions. But by the time I was done with that master's, a comparative religion PhD sounded like the worst idea ever. I was like, oh, I'm going to go get another worthless degree. And I'm only going to be relegated to comparing religions for the rest of my life. No real experience. And then I thought, okay, well, I'll go get a PhD in transhuman psychology or transcendental human psychology. It's just basically the weird part of psychology. And I was like, no, Robin, can't do that either. That's another worthless degree. But then when I found instructional design, I was like, oh, this is it. This is what I want to focus on. This is my passion. This is where I want to live. And that's when I went all the way to applying to get my PhD in instructional design and online learning. But I was doing that as part of all the things to make the transition. I built a portfolio. I wrote a blog that was titled Instructional Design and Online Learning. I did the resume, and all those kinds of things. And then also I thought, oh, well, and also adding that I'm, in a PhD program would help my chances. So it was intentional, but it was still part of the accident.
Yeah. Although, now that you say it, I know that most university people won't like this, but I think instructional design is probably one of the most practical, other than engineering, degrees to get out there. Cause I have a couple in biology and English, and they're really not, they're not really that practical. They're more, I think a lot of that stuff, to be honest, is suited for you to come back to university and teach it.
That's exactly what it is. And that's exactly what I thought would happen if I stayed in religion. Oh, I'm only going to be qualified to teach. Well, essentially nonsense, but, and even the PhD for instructional design wasn't even practical, because it's just like you said, it's just, it's it feeds its own cycle.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of cool. And obviously I think that, I bet you that fuels your philosophy for the Idol Academy, right? So tell me about that, because I know that I gotta say, I know universities are failing students in that respect, in so many ways.
Yeah. And that's why, what's so funny too, is like part of the goal for the PhD was when I was an assistant dean of students, there was a very successful businesswoman who was like a dean and a chair of the business department, but it was her retirement job, right? Like she went and made like money and had like senior executive roles in business. And I just admired her. And she got her PhD or DBA or whatever, right? So she'd come back and teach and lead after she was done, being a businesswoman. And I just thought that was the coolest thing. And so that was part of what fueled, me wanting to get a PhD. Is like, I'm not going to be in academics, but I want it as something like, I want to be a president of a university when I want to retire. And funny enough, instead of becoming a president of somebody else's university, I became a president of my own trade school. And it has definitely been fueled by the experience that I had of, oh my gosh, if I wouldn't have already have landed the job as a corporate instructional designer, I would not be prepared whatsoever to do the work of an instructional designer from a PhD. And it has absolutely sparked everything about what I do. And of course, my own journey to make the transition. You needed practical practice. I mean, learning is doing.
Yeah. Yeah. So you said that, so you were in academia and then you were like, I'm going to go corporate. Like, why? What made you is it that lady, or what was it? The money? What was it? The opportunities?
It's definitely a lot of several things, but I loved higher education. I liked that we would sit around and we would have like deep conversations with the faculty. I loved the students. I really liked being in person because I was also like an adjunct faculty member, loved all that. What I did not love was that as assistant dean of students, I had no upward mobility unless I either got a terminal degree, and then I had to wait for the person above me to die or to move on. And then really you're just and then everything takes forever. Like all the bureaucracy, all that kind of stuff. And then the other thing that I loved when I found instructional design, and specifically in the corporate space, is all the tech and the tools. I wanted to play with making things like hyper engaging. So in higher education, you build curriculum for people who are already extrinsically and intrinsically motivated, right? They've paid money, they've got to get a degree, they've got to get grades, to get the degree, and all these other kinds of things. So you can just make that boring. And they got to do it. They got to do the work. Like, just buckle up, cowboy. Like that's what you got to do. But in corporate, you have to capture their attention. You have to hold their attention, and you have to sometimes build the motivations for them. And that was exciting to me. And they had money to give for the tech and the tools, and you could make decisions quickly because you were solving problems. And then of course I made $35K as an assistant dean of students. And I saw on Glassdoor that the average salary was double that for an entry-level instructional designer, and you could work from home. And I was a mother of one at the time. And so for me, it just seemed like a no-brainer.
Wow. Yeah. Oh my God. That's huge. That's so huge. Wow. Cool. So it's interesting too, like you said, with the tech, because I remember everything in higher ed was like cobbled together. Like, we have this free version of this, and then and so you're always like, just not always. I mean, I'm sure this isn't the place for everybody. Everybody has this experience, but the places where I've worked at, it's like, if we can get the free version, we're going to go with the free version. And it's just substandard. Like, you can't move fast. Right. So yeah, I get it. So, okay. So you're in this So one of the things that I thought was kind of cool, and we've talked about this before, is this idea that you like the upward mobility. Obviously that drove you, right? Like super. I like, you're one of those like overachievers. I love it. You're like, let's go. next. Every time we talk, there's this like, you're like, here's the next goal. And I love that. It's so inspiring. But tell us about that movement. So you were doing your PhD already while you were in a director role, but you had acquired your first position and you had like your portfolio and all those things. So then how did you get to director?
It was just one of those things. It was, so the first job lasted 2 years, and then I moved from Silverpop to CBON, which is like a communications company. And so when I was there, that company got bought out by another company, another telecommunications company, and they just got rid of everybody. I mean, they had a whole training university and they got rid of everybody except for me and my manager. I think they like laid off probably almost 20 people. I don't even know how I ended up being like the last one standing. It's probably because I was like making like one of the lower salaries or something, you know. It's like well, I was making 75, but I'm pretty sure, you know, the managers and all those kinds of people were probably making more than that. And so they kept me on, they kept one manager. And I mean, you could see all those signs around you, you know, like your company's been acquired. They've just laid off your entire training team. And so I got a message on LinkedIn randomly. And I've always been a LinkedIn person, even when it wasn't like a popular tool. And so because you got to get that 100% star profile. And so I've done that back in 2014.
Got to fill it in. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, that bothers me too. I'm like, oh, they keep on lowering that bar. I'm like, what am I still missing?
Yeah.
Anyways.
Fine, I'll put some more achievements on there. But yeah, so somebody reached out to me on LinkedIn, and this, I kid you not, it was like, you know, hand of God kind of thing. They said, would you be interested in starting and running a learning and development department? And I was just like, this could not have come at a better time, you know? And so I said, yes, absolutely. I mean, I didn't care. I didn't have experience starting a learning development department. I've done things like that for like in the higher education space, like whatever, let's go try it out. And so they hired me to do it. And I was still, you know, going through my coursework at this time for the PhD. And I actually did my study for my dissertation and used my workplace as my test subjects to test my hypothesis for that PhD.
I was going to ask you about that because your PhD was in gamification for corporate training.
Yeah.
You know what? One thing that just strikes me, because this is most people are, they'll look at a job qualification even, and they'll be like, oh, I don't have that. So they won't even apply. And you are like, yeah, I'll go for it. I'll try that. Yeah, I can figure it out. Like, you're like the Marie Forleo, right? You're like, it's figure-outable. It's figure-outable. Yeah.
I love that. I love that phrase of her. I've totally used that phrase before. I totally called it out. Yes.
So you just go in there and go, you know, I'll just figure it out. And I think it's kind of cool because to me, that's like the mindset is like 95% of the game. Hey, like you come in and you're like, yeah, I can. So when you're coming in, tell us, like, how do you think about those things? Because I think most people don't have that mindset. They'll look at the list of requirements and they'll be like, I don't have those, so I won't even try. So how do you come in to that situation going, hey, you're going to start a new department? What's your mindset there?
Well, I have to say, this probably does not sound very charitable, but
Go for it.
Don't you like that preface?
Yeah.
But what if I would just think about it, like kind of off the cuff, like part of the reason why I knew I could go get a PhD in my bachelor's program is because I encountered a person that had a doctorate who in my opinion, was an idiot. You know what I mean? And I just thought, like, that guy can go get a PhD. Oh, so it's just perseverance. You just got to do it. You just got to stick with it. It's not smarts. And then I meet the, executive board of the higher education of the faculty at the university. And you're like, wow, they're just winging it. And so they don't know what they're doing. And especially since they put me, I think at the time I was 26, 27 years old. They made me an assistant dean of students, and they put me in charge of setting up their entire online program for their programs. And if they trusted like me to do that at that age, then it just kind of showed me that everybody's just kind of winging it. And so some people, while you can, of course, draw on more experience, and that just gives you more confidence to do it, I just knew that you're just going to figure it out no matter what, no matter how much experience you have or how cocky you are about things. You can always reach out to people. You can always figure things out. You can always do some research. And so, I can do that.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I like the fact that you're looking at, especially now, like you really can, people are so generous. Like you can just be like, I'm stuck, or I can see you're doing this. Can you tell me how you've done that? Or it's like, there's so much you can leverage already from other people's experience to do that, which is so cool. Yeah. But I like that you're going, well, if they can do it, I can do it. Like seriously. But what you said about perseverance, I think it's the key. Like you just keep trying until you're done, right? Like that's really that's what I think separates, the winners from the losers, is how long do you keep on trying, right?
I see it every day. I saw one of my academy members just become a success story. She landed her first full-time instructional design role. She kept track 174 applications.
I love that.
I mean, that's not the norm, but like the fact that you keep persevering after the first 50.
Yeah. Most people give up after like the first no.
Yeah.
They really do. They really do. That's wow. That's a freaking amazing story. Wow. Cool. Good on her. Holy smokes. That's determination. I'm going to get that goddamn job. I'm going to do it. Awesome. She wants it. So one of the things I think is really cool is that, like you said, you had kid number 1, right? As you're working. Now, how many kids do you get now?
I have 3 boys and I'm done.
See, I was thinking about that because I'm thinking, okay, 3 boys, you're kind of a fashionista. Are you kind of disappointed that you didn't have at least one little girl you could dress up?
Well, that was supposed to be number 3. And then of course, number 3 is a boy. And so I'm just like, no, I'm just done now.
They're just really fashionable boys, but it's just not the same. I'm sure it's not the same.
I actually, it's funny enough, like they kind of are. Well, so far the first 2 are a little, like my middle one wears a chain to school. He's in 2nd grade. The only 2nd grade boy wearing like gold chains some days. Other days it's a silver thick chain. Sometimes it's 2 silver and gold. So
that's cute. So you're like, that's my boy. He's accessorizing. So, okay. So then, now, mom, obviously then you transition, like what made you go from corporate to say you want to start your own thing? Because that's terrifyingly scary, isn't it?
I think, how so much of what you don't really quite find all your passion or where you're meant to be or any of that kind of stuff, except for by doing things. You know what I mean? And so through the act of doing, like, I knew instructional design was my thing. I knew I wanted to be corporate, but as I did it, I started to realize I am a terrible employee. And what I mean by that is that my bosses, I had my first boss tell me that while I am a good instructional designer and I meet deadlines and I make good projects and I have good ideas, he wants to fire me because he just doesn't like my style. And I mean, to be fair, it was my first corporate job. I had been in higher education my entire career. And so I just didn't know how to play by the rules. He called me subversive. And I guess like an example would be, for instance, the Silver Pop had this thing where everybody could go to the movies and they paid for your movie ticket and you didn't have to work that day, but everybody had to go to the movies. And I was like, I don't want to go to the movies. I'll just say I'm going to go to the movies, take the ticket, but I'm not going to go sit in a movie. I'm going to go home. Yeah. And so things like that don't make me a good employee. And so it was just that. And then plus getting the clients on the side. And then also just noticing that I'd rather be my own boss. Things just kept pushing me in that direction. And I get bored easily too. And so if you guys have ever been in corporate, if you get hired on a certain job, say you get hired to work on healthcare stuff. Well, all you're going to do for that job is work on healthcare stuff the entire time. Maybe you get to do some compliance if you're lucky. I mean, I guess. But you're going to be stuck in healthcare. And the same was true for telecommunication. I'm stuck in telecommunications. Same was once you build out enough recruiting and staffing and sales and whatever, just kind of, well, what else is there? I got to do it all over again. Mm-hmm. And so that all kind of me not being a good employee. I'd rather manage myself, and I'm dangerous when I'm bored. I think all that kind of added up to
it's a t-shirt, man.
Start my own thing.
Dangerous when I'm bored. You got to do that. Hashtag. I love it. So, okay. So you go into this, starting the Idol Academy, and it's cool how Idol was was on your blog too, how you kind of started it and kind of stuck with you. That's kind of cool. Hey. Yeah. So, okay. So then you get into this. Are you starting the academy going, I'm just going to start a business where I'm doing all the things? Did you go in with crazy aspirations and then have some of them shot down, or were you super practical? What kind of an entrepreneur are you?
I am not practical. I don't know. I think I'm on I'm right in the middle of being crazy or something, in the sense that I'm both. I am a freedom lover that's also an achiever, right? Kind of what you talked about. I'm always thinking about goals, but I also really like freedom to do it my way. And I'm a little loosey-goosey in some of my organization strategies, but I'm always making it happen somehow. You know what I mean? Yeah. And so, the funny thing about it is, when I started my business, I was planning on starting my business while I was the director of that learning development department. I got my LLC, Idol LLC, in 2016. I started building up money from serving clients in a business checking account so that I could start, pouring into the business I wanted to launch. And I even hired somebody to build a complex WordPress website, because I thought that I was going to be a niche recruiting and staffing company for instructional designers. That's what I thought that my company was going to be. And I even had, it was idlecourses.com, and it was hire an idol or become an idol. Mm-hmm. And I had the whole website built out. But when I finally launched it in January 2018, which actually was right at the end of my maternity leave, that's when I quit my job. It was because I had a big client. It had nothing to do with me being able to, match instruct freelancers with clients. Instead, even though I tried to do that, it kept being people wanted to hire me to build their courses. And so you kind of just follow where the money is, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that's how you know what things are working in business and what's bringing in money. And so I was going along with that. But then I thought this client was going to last forever. And then of course you go through like the ups and downs of invoices and net 30s and net 60s and net 90s. And that client, I just did it too fast. I hired a bunch of subcontractors. I was like, I can get more money faster if I just hire more people under me. Well, I just like, while I did get more money faster, I like worked myself out of that job that I thought was going to support my business for a couple of years in half a year. Ooh. And so, yeah, so I mean, I did a good job getting it done fast and, I made some bank, but then I was like, oh and I have not done any lead generation. I don't have a pipeline. I haven't done any marketing. And so I had to fire all my freelancers, and I took that last 10 grand to tell myself I have to do something different and better. I spent 5 of that grand on, no joke, a LinkedIn training course about how to get nonstop leads off of LinkedIn. I spent $5,000, and it was the best investment I've ever made, which I think is kind of crazy. I think people would say, like, why would you take your last $10,000 of your business money and invest it in your own education, right? But when you're a small business, that's what you invest in, right? Yeah. You invest in yourself and your skills, because that's the best chance you have of getting an ROI, right? A return on that investment. That's in my control. And so then I took the other 5, and what I learned from LinkedIn, of course, helped me get more leads. But I also remember learning the lesson of, I don't just want to do services. I want to have products. And being a part of that LinkedIn program that I just paid $5,000 for, what I realized was that guy had taken his expertise and made it a product, which is a digital course product. And I was like, oh, ding, 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 ding. I've made this transition. I've helped people before, because I've always been like the person people come to for resume advice and whatever. And so that was kind of how that all started, in like a soup of despair.
A soup of despair. Good one. But you know what? For me, that what you just said is killer. You said you had 10K left. Half of it went to invest in you. And it's funny because I think that you don't come to that realization. Like, most people don't think that way. They'll just scrounge that little bit of money, but you don't realize you are your biggest investment. That is, and there's also like so many other things that you get from investing in yourself. Like, it's funny because I was listening to this business coach, and somebody was like, I'm getting all this, I have a little bit of extra money. Where should I put it in my business? And he's like, spend it on you until you have no ability to spend it on you any further. Right. And it's like, nobody thinks that way, except Robin Sargent. She's like on it. She's on it. That's so cool. So, and then it gave you all those other ideas about how to build up the academy, which is, I mean, there you go. That's $1 million idea. That's $1 million investment, as far as I'm concerned.
Quite literally this year.
Yeah. Which is so awesome, because I remember us talking and you're like, that's the goal. And I'm like, she's going to do it. She's going to do it.
Now I got new goals. Next year I want to do this. I want to grow the idle talent pool to, place so many people in instructional design contract jobs that, done another 7 figures in that side of the business.
That's fabulous.
And then what's funny is, like, people might think like, and I don't even know if they think this way, but I'm just, some people get weird about money. Some people get weird about talking about money, or like, I'm just in it for money or whatever. But the thing about money is that it is a resource to serve people. And that's how I have always seen the money, because the more resources you have, the more people that you can serve, and the better that you can serve them. And while there are some great free resources out there that rely on volunteers, in many ways they lack the resources that are reliable, because they have no money or no consistency to keep it going. And
Yeah.
just kind of, just like with higher education, where they're just all like, can we get that for free? Can we use the free tools? And it makes things kind of janky.
Yeah, totally does. Yeah, it does. And everything's patchwork. Like to be honest, I've never gone into any of those programs where I was like, wow, you guys really, but there's that, maybe that's a part of it where you're like, oh, they're already, and I actually was talking to somebody who said, oh, they're already an invested audience, so we don't have to work that hard. And I was like, see, that's the difference, because they're your customer and you think you don't have to work that hard. And to me, that's kind of messed up.
Yeah.
So that doesn't work. Now, it's that investing in you to me is just like, right. And that's something that, I mean, I felt like when I went solo, that's one of the things I loved, is that all of a sudden I felt like I didn't need to ask anybody's permission to be like, I'm going to that conference, or I'm going to get that course. Because that's kind of like, that comes with the territory. They're like, you have a $2,000 budget this year, so how do you want to spend it on personal development? And I'm like, that's not even one conference. Or, I don't, so you're like budgeting, you're always budgeting, but here it's like, it's on you, right? Because you're your own business. I love that. So, okay. Now this is really cool. One of the things that I think is neat is that you take the model, like you are helping people transition from like basically from scratch, right? Like they can go all the way to corporate if they want to, but you don't stop there. You don't just do education. Like, can you tell us like what are the pieces that, like, I'm going to say straight up, you're basically obliterating the education, higher ed for instructional design, right? Really, with your program. So how are you, what's going on there? Tell us about that.
Like just kind of like the strategy behind that, or like the business model, or how I'm getting more specific for me.
The strategy behind, like when somebody comes in, what are like, how is it different than me spending my, I don't know how much it costs in the US, probably a lot more in Canada, to get your instructional design degree, come out with a portfolio that looks like it's made for other teachers, and nobody, it looks so far removed from reality. Some of those portfolios that come out of like higher ed, I don't even know. Anyways, but the difference there.
The difference is I think the difference, a lot of it comes from the experience of being an instructional designer in corporate, is that we're always trying to build for them to have real world application, right? That's all we focus on as corporate instructional designers. How can we solve problems? How can we, transfer the training to on the job, right? And so just coming from that place is definitely informed how I built the Idle Courses Academy and how it like continues to shape it. And so really it's built on 3 core principles, which is social learning, deliberate practice, right? And that deliberate practice means not just like practicing alone in the dark by yourself. And I know that you talk a lot about this too, Anna, but it's doing the practice and then getting the feedback from an expert and then implementing that, and then continuing to build up the skills through that continuous cycle of deliberate practice. And then also learner experience design. And so when I started the Academy, I had 12 tiny little lessons on how to kind of build their portfolio. And from there, it was just built based on the learners that I had in every single cohort. What do you guys want? What's your feedback? What are you struggling with? What's next? What's next? What's next? Have you gotten your job? And I just am obsessed with my learners. Just like, everyone wants to say, well, I really feel obsessed with like, what it is they think, what it is that they want. And I think that probably has also a little bit to do with my people pleasing nature. So that certainly didn't hurt in being learner experience design centered. And so when people come in at this point in the Academy, it's all kind of been shaped and molded on these 3 pillars. And so now when you come in, you understand really that everything you can go step by step, but what are the learning goals? The goals are for you to take action and do things and to create things. And so we say, there's two paths, right? Like those who want to go and land a job or become a freelancer, or you just want to get better through the process of deliberate practice. So I'll just focus on, the core, right? Which is people that want to go and get jobs. And so their main goal is to create their portfolio and their portfolio assets. And so everything else revolves around, well, how do you create those assets? Well, you learn and you do it messy, and then you get feedback, you implement it, and then you get feedback from the academy coaches, and then you implement it. And if you keep doing that for all the things, you do it for your scripts, for your videos, for your e-learning courses, for your prototypes, for your PowerPoint presentations, your facilitator guides. If you do that for every single asset, you get feedback from two different, your peers, and then an expert, and it just takes every single asset up to another level where people come out of the academy and they land jobs at Apple, Google, Sephora, Tesla, and whatever, because before they even land their job, they've gone through like some really hardcore deliberate practice. And that really that's the secret sauce. And while there are like kind of step-by-steps, we say that our program is all support. You got support through the training, you got support through the coaches, you have support through the mentors, you have support through the community. But just like on the job, they are treated like knowledge workers in the academy. You got to figure things out. You got to kind of know what it is that you where your own gaps are by identifying where it is that you want to be. What is your end goal? Here's where your gaps are. Now that's what you're going to focus on in your deliberate practice. And so that's kind of how it works.
It's kind of crazy because I think that those are the pieces that are specifically missing in academia, which is that deliberate practice. I mean, there's a lot of submissions, and then people who, as far as I'm concerned, who have never worked in the industry are now, and I apologize, you might hear the leaf blower for the fourth time this week. Leaf blowers, my favorite tool. But this is what's kind of interesting is that you said that, this is so cool. So you're coming in from this, you have a corporate perspective, so you know what it's like. There's this idea of, as much as I mean, not everything, but a lot of the things in corporate are there designed to produce results, practical results, right? Other than some stuff, but then you have people working on portfolios where their context is somebody just came out and they told me their portfolio was working with a professor to put together their course on like calculus. And I was like, that doesn't translate, right? So it's like the context is so different that you can't ever, like, you really can't produce solutions for people coming out because you have no idea what that's like. All you've dealt with is abstract content that doesn't solve problems for anybody, right? So that's kind of crazy. Anyways, so one of the things that I think is really cool during our summit interview, what we talked about, and I love this because you talked about it a little bit today, is that you are student obsessed. I like that you said people pleaser, and it's not a bad thing, because I think that, to be honest, I think a lot of women are more people pleasers, which is, I'm not ashamed of that, because I mean, we would make terrible moms if we weren't, right? I mean, it's okay. I revel in that trait as long as it's matched for you. It sounds like it's matched with like high competitiveness and which is great. I think it's awesome mix. But one of the things that I think was really cool was during our summit interview, we really got into like some of the big lessons that you had, because you've been observing people, you've been observing what works, you've been observing the traits that get somebody to the next level. And we talked a little bit about it. We talked about perseverance, but there's other things you get into in the summit interview. So I hope everybody signs up for the Learner Engagement Summit just to hear that part, because it's so cool. And I learned so much from you on that. Also about like accessorizing. So just that's right. I love those. Those are beautiful. Oh, anyways, Robin, this was so fabulous. Where can people go to learn more about you and your work?
Oh, well, thank you, Anna. They idle courses all day, right? It's like, I mean, don't spell idle all day, but idlecourses.com, at idle courses on all the things like the Instagram, the Facebook. I'm not on Twitter, or we're not on Twitter. It's not even a me anymore. It's a we. We're not on Twitter, on LinkedIn. And then of course on Facebook group, we have a Become an Idol Facebook group if people are interested in, making that transition. And we have a podcast as well, Become an Idol. So you'll find us. Just Google Idle Courses. You'll find us.
Fabulous. Thank you so much for this, my dear. It was so much fun.
Thank you, Anna. I really appreciate it. And all the work that you do of, stopping that boring learning. So appreciate you.
Awesome.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that episode. Now, if you want to learn more about what I do, or interactive storytelling, or scenarios, anything like that, go to scenariosecrets.com and check out the free training there. You're going to love it. Also, if you haven't already, make sure you leave a review. And if you really enjoyed this particular episode, I'd love to know that. The way for you to show me that would be if you took a screenshot of your phone and just shared it on social media and made sure you tag me. All right. Hope you have a fabulous day, and I'll see you in the next episode. Bye.